All right, I am Tony Toich with Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter, and I am an Atlanta-based realtor trying to help other agents get better at what they do. So I had a chance to sit down with Barry Haley, a top agent, top team in New York City. Oh, I'm sorry, Montauk to Manhattan. We had a great conversation. I told him it was going to take 15 minutes of his day, and he gave me much more time than I asked for. I truly appreciate him. I am grateful for the time he gave me. You got to check out this interview. An amazing real estate agent from New York. He works from Montauk through Manhattan, and has an amazing team. Is a top producing team. And I'm gonna let Barry tell us a little bit about him. Barry, can you tell me, us people watching, about your career and kind of how you got your start?
Sure. I actually went into real estate in 2005. And my trajectory was that I was a top producer for a local 17-store chain. And, pretty much on the hamster wheel of what I call a broker-centric model versus an agent-centric model. And I built up first 2 years in the business. Like everybody else, I started out with family and friends. And, it was an interesting opening gambit because my sister had a house in Center Island, and the office had an opportunity for someone that wanted to rent. And I had rented my sister's cottage for her. That's how that was my first deal. And then the office got a lead for Center Island rental. So they looked at me, well, he's our Center Island guy. Let him take the rental lead, because it wasn't a sale lead. So they gave me the rental lead as the new guy, right? So I went out there. The woman had two homes, one that she wanted to rent, and the other one that she had just redone and renovated. One block, the other one's view to the water. And I looked at her and I said, you just poured all this money into this rental. Why would you want to hold on to it when the other property is blocking? So anyway, make a long story short, I left there with 5 listings. Both properties for rent, both properties for sale, and then combine the 2 properties into one package. And I wound up selling all of it, not renting it. So we hit like a $2.5 million deal straight out of the bat. And the guys looked at me and go, that's the rental guy, So probably in those days, it was about 60 to 70 grand. Thank you for the balloons. And I looked and I said, you know what? This is not so hard. I just got to do a couple of these, a few times a year, ancillary income. And little did I know that was the only deal that I was going to do for that year.
Oh, wow.
Right?
And can I just touch on that real quick? Because we talk about, success is when opportunity meets preparation, right? And you identified you went in that, hey, it's a rental. How many agents can be like, I don't want to handle a rental? And you went in it and you identified an opportunity and turned it into 5 deals, which could have just been a rental from a different perspective.
100%. Pardon me. That's my 4-year-old daughter, 4-pound daughter. Yeah. So listen, I coach, I teach, I educate, I mentor, I run programs, and I'm a mentor, more so mentor than coach. And I tell my people, there is no such thing as a bad lead. There's only bad conversion. No such thing as a bad lead. And I don't want to hear about this. I called, I emailed, I texted, I left 3 messages. Obviously, they don't want to hear from me. Obviously, you don't want to connect with them because it's not about that. It's 12 to 15 touches, and you need to nurture them. We plant tulips in this industry, and if you're not prepared to put in the time, the energy, and the follow-up, it's going to affect your success.
Oh, absolutely.
So there is no such thing as a bad lead. There's only bad follow-up.
I 100% agree. And I mean, in fact, for instance, I closed, a deal from a cold call this last summer. He was unemployed when I first connected with him. And I said, can I stay in touch about real estate? He said, well, Tony, I'm unemployed, but you can stay in touch. 5 years later, I closed his first home purchase. Who is going to be his realtor for life? Is because I continued to follow up, and it wasn't about it being a bad lead. It was just, he said yes.
You know, Tony,
So,
my biggest aha, I sit in Gary Keller's top 200 agents out of 180,000. Always come away with a big rock. And, look, you and I both know that in order to succeed in this business, you need to be committed, intentional, learning based, hungry, happy, and have hustle, right?
mhm.
So my big rock from Mega Camp, because I'm always picking up a rock, and if I could share anything with anybody and with your audience, it's not who's in your database, it's whose database you're in. It's a
Who's
game
calling you?
changer.
Hmm.
So your guy, your 5-year guy, you were in his database.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, he's recognizing my call, right? Wanting to pick up when I do call, and and seeing my emails, right? Returning those, responding to those, staying interactive.
Yeah, it's key. You want to ultimately leave raving fans
Hmm.
marinating for when they're ready if they're not ready.
Absolutely, because they're not going to be ready that often, right? And the average salesman follows up 1.5 times. That's not going to get you to the next home purchase or the next home sale.
If you're coming from profit breath, if you're coming from recruiting breath, if you're coming from anywhere other than abundance and from service, your game is not going to be effective. And
Yeah,
people see through that. So you have to be really coming from contribution
absolutely.
and coming from service. And the biggest thing that I tell realtors, and I know we're kind of interweaving some of the things we talked about that we want to cover, but I believe in being organic, right? And
Hmm.
so ultimately, the key for us is to be able to create these raving fans that have an impression of you and that you create a relationship rather than a transaction. So you need to be relationship based. And when you are, that sincerity, that genuineness, is what's going to really take them to the next level. So I think going back to it, yeah, no such lead is a bad lead. It's just bad conversion and just a question of time.
Hmm.
Just yesterday, one of my top agents had a lead that he was working on. The guy told him, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And my wife isn't ready until my wife's ready to retire. And he followed up, stayed in touch. This is going on 18 months. And he reached out to him the other day and he said, how are you? How's things? Just checking in. And the guy said, hold on a second. And he screamed up the stairs, hey, honey, are you ready to retire yet? She screamed, yeah. And he said, come on over tomorrow. And he took the listing.
That is awesome. That's a great story. I love it.
Yeah.
It's,
And why? Because he was staying top of mind. He was staying in touch.
mhm,
They're not always ready. But you need
mhm.
to always be ready when they're ready, and you need to be able to give them the time to find that time, but to still stay in touch. So it's all about conversion.
Absolutely. So, what was your superpower? What do you think drove you to the level that you're at now?
Well, I've always been competitive, self-competitive mostly. I believe the race is always with you,
Hmm.
within yourself. So I've always been driven to succeed. Look, I went into the apparel industry in 1976 at the age of 26 years old and created a niche and was the founder of women's large size clothing back in the apparel industry. And I didn't leave until I went into real estate in 2005. But I had always made decent money in real estate, buying homes in the Hamptons, etc.
Hmm.
But I looked at it and I said, why don't you make your avocation and your vocation aligned? And so the passion that I had for seeing success in real estate on an individual basis, I looked at it and it was a transition. My first 2 years, I think I looked at this as an additional vehicle to make some additional cash and looking for another business.
Mhm.
because the garment center was becoming difficult. And then after about 2 years, I said, you know what? You got to go all in. You got to be who you are, apply who you are. People are not a hologram.
Yep.
The way you are is the way you are. And take your passion in the way that you work, um, and pour it into this. And I had this good, bad, call it a value judgment epiphany when, oh my God, I'm a realtor.
Mhm.
And then I said, well, if I am, I'm going to be the best at it. And so I took it much more seriously after my first 2 years, because my approach to it initially was, I've always made money in real estate. I'll do a couple of deals. I'll see what it has, pick up another couple of $100K and go along. But then I decided to make it, like I said, my passion. And that's basically what happened from then on in. I was a top producing agent. My superpower, um, coming from abundance, follow up, and I'm a connector. I like
Mhm.
to connect the dots. I like to connect people. Um, I don't know if you've read Rocket Fuel.
I have
Um,
not. I'm writing it down.
oh my
Rocket
God,
fuel.
definitely. So I started reading Rocket Fuel, and it basically came down to two things. And everybody can be a blend of it, but you're either a visionary
Mhm.
or an integrator. And I'm a high D, so on a disc. So there were like 13 things that an integrator does, and there were 13 things that that an integrator does, and 13 that they don't do. There were 13 things that a visionary does, and 13 things that visionaries don't do.
Mhm.
And I scored like a 96 or a 98 on visionary. And the answer is a visionary needs to have an integrator with them in order for them to be successful and to have that proper balance. And
Yeah, yeah,
so,
right. I was gonna say, yeah, you need to have right the things you are lacking in your skill set. You need to have that be replaced by the people that you hire and you work with.
100%. And you're also a culmination of the top 5 people you hang with or in your network. And I started looking at who am I hanging with, and basically I invested in the ecosystem that Keller Williams has, which is second
Mhm.
to none. Um, and so shooting through the ranks of it, connecting, my team is the number one team in all of Long Island through Queens. That's Montauk, Nassau, Suffolk, Queens County, into and in New York, Manhattan. And we do
Wow,
about 90,
and can I
yeah,
ask how much volume? Yeah, I think maybe you might have been going that direction. How much
yeah.
volume that
Yeah,
is?
we do about 90 million. We help about 200 families. My team is multicultural, multilingual, multi-generational. We have a full-time marketing director who happens to be my wife and my life partner. We have
Is she the integrator?
she is, believe it or not, she's the creative force
Mhm.
behind the company from the artistic point of view, and also I value her opinion on a business. So she's a high D person. She's
Mhm.
right brain, left brain. So she's got, a creative aspect to her, but she also has understand business savvy. Um, but no, I have been in search for the integrator. And when you have an integrator, you need to start at the level that you're at. So
Mhm.
if you read the MREA, the first hire that you make is an admin when
Admin.
you get to a certain point. So an admin can be an integrator, but at
Mhm.
different levels, you need different level of integration.
Okay.
And where we are now, we have a director of expansion and growth. Excuse me. He was the team leader for my New York Market Center
Mhm.
with 650 agents. And we were talking back and forth. And, I have, like Diogenes in search of an honest man, I was in search of my integrator at the level that we're at now, because we're expansionary. We're expanding to the Florida market, what I call the I-95 corridor. And we've gone and expanded into the Bronx, Staten Island, all of the boroughs of Manhattan, and even up into certain areas in Westchester. How? By creating referral partners where we have win-win relationships.
Mhm.
So probably 35 to maybe 40% of the business, that we do is agent to agent referral. With Keller Williams, 35 years of stats. People can look us up and go, I know who you are. I see what you do. I see the level that you do it at. I see your marketing. My aunt has to sell a house in Long Island. My
Mhm.
cousins have a trust and estate situation. I'm also Part 36 approved by New York State to handle divorce, trust and estates. And I teach my agents, and I believe that I teach a course called How to Be a Disruptor in Your Market and Market Center. And I
Mhm.
teach another one on how to not be perceived as a realtor, but an economic advisor in the real estate world.
I'm glad you brought that up because I really wanted to kind of talk about that, the difference between the two.
Yeah. Well, knowledge, value, confidence, expertise, and perception would be
Mhm.
the answer to that. So, I don't want to put anybody down or talk negatively. I don't believe in negativity, but there is a difference between somebody that approaches someone that says, who do you know that needs to buy or sell a piece of real estate? To, by the way, I have a particular expertise in eliminating capital gains. And what I do is build, protect, and transfer trust from generation to generation. Who do you know that might take advantage of my expertise in 1031 exchanges, Delaware Estates and Trusts, financial planning, senior planning, that I could sit down and do an economic review of their real estate portfolio?
I mean, the power in that statement versus the first statement, it's they're two different ends of the spectrum, right? I mean, it's amazing. And that's, that goes with it being learning based, right?
100%.
Hmm.
And the bottom line is, even if you don't have that level of expertise, you surround yourself by the people that do. You can still
Hmm.
have that conversation, different conversation of saying, let's discuss your economic real estate portfolio. What does that look like? We had a guy that the other day came in, wanted to list his home out in Medford, Long Island, had his kids living in it. They were waiting to buy another place, didn't want to meet there, didn't want to get the kids involved, just wanted to meet us to find out if we were the right combination. So we met with him. And, we're not talking crazy. This was, a 500-600K home,
Hmm.
nothing unreasonable about it. And once we unpacked and once we developed the relationship, and once we asked the questions, he came to the next thing and he says, and by the way, who do you know that at your level up in the Poconos? Because I have another property up there, that I'm looking to liquidate. And by the way, I'm going to be buying something else down in Florida.
Hmm.
So here was a guy who came in, with a 500K. And if you don't look below the waterline, if you look at the iceberg only from water level line up, you miss what's going on. Or as Bruce Lee says, if you
Hmm.
concentrate on my finger, you miss the totality of the universe behind it. And you being a ninja, I'm sure
Ninja
you
warrior.
follow. I'm sure you follow Bruce. So the idea was, he was a guy with an ordinary home, but what was he? He was carrying a real estate portfolio.
Hmm. Yep,
Those are the
exactly.
kind of conversations you want to have. Our job is to ask questions, go deeper, ask more questions, go deeper, create the relationship. And in doing so, you're going to answer questions for them that they don't even know they're asking.
Hmm.
And when you do, you'll walk away from that as the expert in the field.
Wow, absolutely. Hey, I hope people are taking notes, watching this. They can rewind it. I got a couple ahas already that I'm going to share at the end here. So, do you have any, in this market, right? We're seeing a lot going on, a lot of confusion happening with the NAR settlement. People are thinking, oh my gosh, there's no commission for agents now. Do you have any kind of good advice for home buyers or home sellers, really how to, how to get by in this market, and any help for them?
Yeah, I'd like to give you an overall perception first, which is probably more related to the agents.
Hmm.
And then I'll dive into buyer and seller.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Um, but for the agents that are out there that are dealing with what they think is a mess, wrong mindset, wrong perception.
Hmm.
The world has been set back on its axis because before, many markets had a choice of having a customer or a client. And we
Hmm.
all know that a client is defined by having a fiduciary trust, which is exemplified by having a written contract.
Hmm.
And then there was a gray area. Am I working with them as a broker agent? Am I working with them as a buyer broker? Not everybody went to buyer broker, and buyer broker was, in essence, prior to this, more of a difficult transition to get people to commit to a realtor
Hmm.
at different levels, no matter how you could slice a buyer broker agreement,
Yep.
by the house, by the month, by the county, whatever. They're customizable. But when you eliminate the alternative, life becomes very clear.
Hmm.
You don't have customers and clients anymore, realtors, you have clients. And you need to create a fiduciary responsibility by law now. And you need to be able to consult, explain, and understand. And that's basically setting the market back on its axis. Because when you eliminate the alternative, you need to create it, which is a way for you to ensure that you get paid for your efforts. So for the experienced agents, this is a windfall and a correction in the market, in my opinion. Now, for sellers and buyers, let's separate that out. On the sell side, my conversation sort of sounds like Mr. and Mrs. Seller. This is what we get for a compensation success fee. I kind of like, I'm a big fan of Phil Jones. And
Hmm.
if you haven't read his book, Exactly What to Say in Real Estate, you're making a mistake and you owe it to yourselves to read it. He's the master of, in my opinion, a certain amount of neurolinguistics, but it's perception in your conversation.
Yep. Let me get this go away. There we go. Yeah, we actually do exactly what to say role play every Friday with some people from my office.
Perfect. So bottom line is, my answer is I stay away from the conversation about commission. I prefer to talk about compensation and
Hmm.
success fee. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is what we get for our success and compensation fee. And by the way, I highly recommend that you also put out something for the buyer agents. And the more you put out, the more eyes, the more agents you're going to get on your property. So it's in your best interest. Now, I'm going to explain to you what all of your options are so that you
Hmm.
understand that, because you don't have to do that. But
Yep. There we go.
I'm going to suggest that you do.
Hmm.
So that's in essence, the conversation with the seller. And the conversation on the buyer side is, look, nobody walks into a lawsuit as a plaintiff or a defendant where the other person is fully represented and you're not. And we have a particular program where we feel we crack the code on buyer brokerage. It's too lengthy to go into, a lot of secret sauce, but ultimately we're sitting down with our buyers and we're saying, here's our value prop. Here's what we do for you that you
Hmm.
cannot get from a listing agent because there's an internal conflict between representation, and you need to have representation. Here's our value prop. Here's our additional props that we offer them. And we make it so that it's a complete win-win. Fire me anytime
Hmm.
if you're not happy with the job I do, but understand that I'm going to make a difference in your outcome. I can negotiate for you. And we unpack a value proposition. It's a long, drawn out stuff. So, we can talk about it further if you want. But when they're done seeing our value prop, it's pretty much a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. Obviously, people can say I'm biased. When you're buying, a product, an investment that is hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're not willing to spend a few percent to make sure you're protected in mistakes that cost you tens, 20, and 30 and above thousands of dollars. There's, it's being very short-sighted. I think when people say, "Oh, yeah, I don't need someone to represent me, and I can save a percent," that this listing agent is going to save me because I'm not bringing a buyer's agent.
The conversation with the seller is bottom line. I'm going to get you more money net in your pocket.
Mhm.
Don't focus on what you're costing me. If you were going in for surgery and there was a guy that did 1,000 of those a day and a new guy that's out and hasn't done the procedure, is that where you want to cut your budget?
No, no, absolutely not.
So,
So,
and on the buy side, it's the same thing. Look, 93% of the business is done by 7% of us.
yeah, exactly. So, Barry, I tell you what, I have gone well beyond. I told you I was going to take 15 minutes of your day, and I've gone well beyond that. I mean, I could pick your brain all day. I'm not going to lie, because your experience, your wealth of knowledge is, it's been a great conversation. Even before we started recording today, I think my ahas, like especially when it came down to what it takes to be successful, like committed, intentional, and learning based. Those are just for me some of the big ahas that I really took away from this conversation. And I really
Great.
appreciate you pouring your time into this, and hopefully helping other agents get better. And hopefully maybe they'll send you some referrals and from
If they want it
Montauk
done
to
right,
Manhattan.
yeah, if they want it done right, we will get their clients and them to the closing table anywhere from Montauk through Manhattan. And we're down in Florida now as well. So anything I can do to help, be a pleasure. I appreciate your time. Thank you. And whatever you need, Tony, I'm here for you.
I'm going to stay in touch. I've been called King of Cold Calls, or Cold Call King, and King of Follow Ups here in Atlanta.
I'll be in
I don't
Atlanta for
stop.
Thanksgiving. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to break some bread when I'm in there.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Send me a text when you're in town.
All right, you got it, buddy.
All right, I'm Tony Toich with Keller Williams Atlanta Perimeter. I hope that was helpful information for you. For me, I had just some great gems that I took away from that, especially being committed to being a realtor, being the economic advisor, being intentional about what you do, and being learning based. That is what's going to make you better at what you do as a realtor. If you got anybody clients that I can help here in Atlanta, give me a call, send me an email. I'd love to see what I can do to help. Additionally, hey, if you want to connect, just talk about what I do, or how I can help you. I'm always happy to run scripts, talk about my strategies, because I want to see other agents get better at what they do. Stay motivated.